welcome to another Friday night. We're working through a little series on anger, and we're coming to practical tools for dealing with anger. And last time we looked at tools when you're in the heat of the moment. So your anger surges and it goes from 0 to 100 in a nanosecond. What do you do in that moment to resist the pull? But today I want to look at what do you do outside of that time? Those times when you're not angry. Can you still be working on your anger then? And yes, you can. And here's what I want you to see. Your anger issues or your anger problems are rarely solved during an angry episode. You can develop tools to manage the anger and to not do hurtful things, but there's still anger issues underneath. And so most lasting change when it comes to anger happens in the calm periods when you're not angry, because it's then that your brain and your nervous system are more capable of reflection and learning. And what might help you really appreciate that is to realize that for most people with complex trauma, anger isn't the main issue. Anger is a symptom of the issue. The problem is deeper stuff. And so some refer to anger as a bodyguard emotion. It's a protecting thing. It's protecting you at times when old wounds are about to get touched, or they do get touched. And so old fears, shame, grief, betrayal, helplessness, whenever anything starts to come in at those old wounds, anger takes over. And so I got to be working on those other issues. Those are the deeper issues underneath the anger. And that's what I work on outside of those anger episodes. And that's what I want to look at today. So some hopefully very practical things for you. So number one, I would just really say, become a student of your anger. Learn to explore your anger with compassion. Don't just avoid it. Don't just see it as bad, as something that you just can't go there. Learn to really get to the roots of why am I angry? And so the goal is to really become aware and understand your anger and see it as a source of information. So it's not just energy. It's information. It's telling you a whole bunch of stuff about what's happening below it in your deep internal life. So key with this is you're going to be exploring your anger, but do it with compassion. Because previously, most people would explore it with judgment. This is bad. I'm being a bad person. No, this is trying to tell me something. Something's going on here that's very significant. I want to understand it. So take the judgment out of it and have a lot of compassion. Now, last time we just mentioned that it's really helpful to begin to look at a lot of emotions through, do they remind me of anything when I was a child? And so if you're going through an anger episode, is there a time when I was a child when I went through a similar anger experience? And the memory may come back. And then you can ask yourself, okay, where in my body do I feel this anger right now? What does it feel like? What kind of sensations am I getting right now? And then for some, it's to go, let's go back to that 6-year-old and really see them as almost a separate entity, a hurting child who was helpless, whose needs weren't being met, who was being betrayed or disrespected. Let me comfort that child. What does that child need right now? That is so important to begin to explore, is to be able to go back to the roots of that wound and begin working with that child, that part of yourself. And then another piece of this is, what messages was that child starting to believe about anger, about themselves at that time? Because what you're going to find is probably part of you is still believing that today. So it's not just the emotion of anger, it's the lies that began to be believed out of the childhood experiences. Then begin to understand what are the situations that trigger my anger the most consistently, and start keeping track of that. Then what emotions come immediately before the anger? So now you're seeing anger as a secondary emotion. I want to get to the primary emotion. What's underneath the anger? Is it hurt? Is it feeling disrespected? Whatever. So what emotions are right before I let the anger take over and drown everything else out? So what you're looking for is, what is my anger protecting me from, or seeking to protect me from? Begin to understand that. Then I think it's helpful to go, okay, is there a need right now in my life that is not being met? Begin to explore that. And then, has my shame been triggered? Is this anger connected somehow to shame? Because often it is. And then, is this anger somehow connected to grief, to a loss, that I don't have something precious? Because often it is. Is this anger due to an old wound that hasn't healed being touched again? So feeling not seen, or that my needs never mattered, or not being understood. Nobody gets me. Nobody cares about my opinion. Or about no one wanting to be your friend, a deep loneliness inside and feeling like you don't belong. Or a deep sense of helplessness or hopelessness, or not being respected or valued by anybody, or your boundaries, your wishes being disregarded and overstepped. Or is this around injustice or betrayal or abandonment, or that nobody wants to connect with me, or I feel out of control? All of those are old wounds, and they can get triggered today. And when they do, anger comes. So begin to understand your old wounds that need to be healed. So your anger now is pointing you to areas where healing still needs to happen. And until the healing happens in those areas, you're still going to have anger issues. But once you start to heal in those areas, the anger will start to dissipate. So let me move to some helpful tools that you can begin to implement on a regular basis. One of the things that many people find helpful is to take an anger inventory a couple times a day. So you just sit down and get quiet and go, on a scale of 1 to 10, where is my anger at right now? Now, it's important to understand that there's some mornings I can wake up and I can go, oh, I don't feel angry at all. But I've been only up a few minutes. It's all quiet. I'm by myself. I don't really get a sense of my anger until I get into the day and interact with people and events. And then all of a sudden you go, oh, I'm feeling quite irritable today. What's going on here? So sometime in the morning when you begun to interact with people and the events of your day, do an inventory of where's my anger at. And then with that, begin to get to know, what are my early warning signs that anger is building? So I get a little more irritable with people. I just want to be alone. I don't want to connect with anybody. Or I get more negative and critical and find fault with everything. So if you begin to see those early warning signs, then you go, I got some anger stuff here I need to look at. So you're not just doing an inventory on felt anger, you're doing an inventory on early warning signs as well. And then be aware that there's going to be certain times in the day when you're going to be more prone to anger. So some people talk about being hangry because they know that when they're hungry, they're more prone to be angry. Or some people, when they're done school or done work for the day, they've put in a really intense day and they come home and all of a sudden they're more angry because they just want to be alone. They don't want any more demands on them. So be aware of that. Other people, when they're getting near the end of the day, it's getting near bedtime, they just start to feel more angry. So identify your times when you're more prone to anger. And I would say be aware that if you're seeing the early warning signs of anger, you can come to a point where there's a line that if you cross that, you're going to give in to kind of an anger explosion. So you need to know, where's this line that my anger goes from being I can manage it to it's beyond me managing well. So if you discover that you've got early warning signs, so you're irritable, you don't really want to connect with people, try to figure out what's going on here. Why is anger building? And so it could be I'm overtired. I haven't been really taking care of myself, meeting my 12 needs. Maybe I'm feeling a bit depressed. Maybe I've got some anxiety stuff due to some stuff that's coming up in my schedule. Maybe I'm overstressed. I got too much on my plate. And so begin to figure out what is feeding this early warning sign stuff. And so then once you do that, you go, okay, I need to make some changes here. I need to address not the anger, but the issues that are causing the anger. So I need to say no to some things. I need to have some rest. I need to meet my 12 needs. I need to connect with somebody. I need to somehow get myself back to my ventrovagal state. So you're doing some self-parenting. And this is such an important skill to learn. Another tool that some people find to be quite helpful is just to start keeping an anger log, so that every time they get angry and they go through kind of evaluating it and seeing the needs and the hurts underneath and the causes, they just keep a log and they write it down. Then they look at how they express their anger, the early warning signs, the other emotions, and they keep this detailed log. And so they begin to see patterns. They begin to see other warning signs. They begin to see what changes in their thinking, their body, their emotions, their actions. They begin to identify the stories they tell themselves when they're getting angry. That becomes such an important part of understanding your anger. So some people like to fill in the blanks. When they're calm and they go, after they've done this, I get most angry when, or underneath my anger, I often feel. So what are the other emotions? My anger is trying to protect. What's it trying to protect me from? The thing I needed but didn't receive was, the boundary I need now is, and the grief underneath my anger is. So that might be helpful. Now, a third tool is to prepare for situations that you're going to go into that in the past have caused you to be triggered. So let's say that you're going to your parents and you know your dad's going to push your buttons, you know that mom's going to do things, and that's just going to touch old wounds, that's going to get you angry. So you want to prepare yourself and go, okay, if dad says this, instead of me responding the old way and getting drawn back into the old dynamics, I am now going to respond this way. I'm going to go walk for a walk. I'm going to leave the room, whatever. But you come up with a new plan for how you're going to respond to the trigger, so that now when the trigger happens, you're not just going quickly to old survival tools. Your brain goes, oh, I got another option here. That can be so helpful in not giving into the anger and not feeding the anger and doing new steps to break from the anger. Think of the times then when you do tend to be more prone to anger. So it could be every time you go through a change or you're sitting in the unknown. You're just more on edge, more irritable, and more angry at people. Okay, what can I do in those times? Or when you go on vacation. For many people, if they go on vacation, all of a sudden they just find themselves more angry because they're looking for this paradise where they have no demands, everything goes smoothly. But what happens when it doesn't? So I need prepared for the reality that vacations aren't always paradise. Vacations have ups and downs and disappointments and frustrations. I need to be prepared for that. And then you have friends over and you like to handle things one way, your partner likes to handle things another way, and it leads to a lot of anger. Prepare yourself for that. Or you have the kids have the day off school, so all of a sudden you got the kids underfoot all day. That tends to get you angry. So prepare for events that can be very triggering. So then the next thing is gradually learning to express this powerful emotion appropriately in a way that doesn't violate love. So it is not trying to get rid of ever expressing anger, because that's still saying anger is a bad emotion. No, anger is a good emotion. Anger needs to be expressed. I need to learn to express it in a loving, helpful way. And so for some people, before they actually go to somebody and express the anger, they first talk about it to somebody else that's safe, or they journal about it, or they talk to their therapist, but they begin to process it with somebody else before they actually express it. And that helps them, when they actually get to express it, to do a good job of it. I think it's so important just to learn to let yourself alone feel your anger. Don't try to suppress it. Don't try to distract yourself from it. Let yourself feel it. Some people use what we call an anger bowl, and that is they just get it out. They talk about it. They admit it. They express it by themselves. They might yell. They might run around. They might shake, but they're allowing this anger to come out, this energy within them to come out. Now, it's really important to be careful at this point, because often what you're doing and letting it come out is the goal is to resolve it. Whereas some people hitting a pillow, screaming, they're actually just feeding it. They're not thinking in terms of what do I need to do to resolve it. They're just giving expression to it, which ends up only feeding it. So once you've learned to kind of manage it, learn to express it, then give yourself permission to express it, to actually express it to somebody. That's going to feel wrong. That's going to make you get very insecure. What's the other person thinking of me? Are they judging me? But that becomes an important part in learning to express this very powerful thing in doses that are reasonable. So having said all of that, just again, be aware that everybody's different. So you got to find out what works best for you. Now, in light of complex trauma, a lot of people, once they first start to express it, actually allow themselves to express their anger, they feel bad. They feel they're doing something wrong. So understand that you can express all your other emotions and you don't feel guilty. Why is it you just feel guilty when you express anger? Because that's part of how your conscience has been mistrained, where you had to just see all anger as bad and suppress it. So you have to retrain yourself that expressing emotions is not necessarily bad and doesn't mean you're out of control. And sometimes, sadly, in our culture, men are allowed to express their anger, but women aren't. There's a double standard. And so women that express their anger are seen as out of control, whereas often it's the men who are out of control. So women have an extra challenge in dealing with that. One of the piece with this is, for many people, when they hear somebody who's passionately saying something, they assume that person is angry. And then they get all nervous and scared. So begin to realize there's a difference between saying something passionately and saying something in an angry way. The next thing is keep learning about your anger. And what I mean by this is not just doing kind of that internal evaluation learning, but keep reading books, listening to podcasts. You want to keep getting more information and understanding about complex trauma, about anger. That's going to help you get more insight into your own anger. So you don't have to do this constantly, but I just encourage people that a couple of times a year, just do some stuff around. I want to learn more about anger, and I want to keep building my understanding. That is so important. It's kind of like preventative maintenance on a car. Nothing's wrong with the car at the moment, but you just take it in a couple times a year, just have a mechanic check it out to make sure everything is good. And that's what you're doing with yourself. So finally, let me just end with this. When a person has struggled with anger for years, they often begin to feel that they're powerless against this powerful force. They feel like a victim to their own anger. What I hope you begin to realize is that you don't have to be a victim to your anger. You can develop tools so that your anger now teaches you, serves you, is something that is helpful and productive. So it's possible. And I hope this has helped you. If it has, please like, subscribe, share, make a comment. We really appreciate it. Thanks again.